On the Senate floor Wednesday, Republican leader Mitch McConnell continued to rail against Democratic lawmakers over inflation. He took issue with the White House celebration of the Inflation Reduction Act, which came on the same day the most recent CPI report revealed inflation climbed 8.3% in the 12 months ending in August. McConnell said, quote, President Biden and our Democratic colleagues chose to celebrate this awful inflation report with the so-called Inflation Reduction Party yesterday at the White House, while the Dow Jones plummeted over 1,000 points. Republicans have continued to hammer President Biden and Democrats over inflation, as pocketbook issues remain central to their midterm messaging.
Mr. President.
Republican leader.
The American people's number one priority is runaway inflation that is smashing their family budgets and crushing our economy. Yesterday, the latest inflation report showed that soaring prices are still completely out of control. Inflation has totaled 13.2% since the day President Biden took office. We just had the worst 12 months for both food, inflation, and electricity since the fallout from the Carter administration. President Biden and our Democratic colleagues chose to celebrate this awful inflation report with a so-called Inflation Reduction Party yesterday at the White House. While the Dow Jones plummeted over 1,000 points, while the S&P 500 lost more than 4% of its value in one day, while American families can't afford gas, groceries, or electricity, Washington Democrats partied on the White House lawn to celebrate their policies. That's what happened yesterday. This is what Democrats do while our economy crumbles. They subsidize luxury electric cars. They make plumbers and retail workers eat the graduate school debt of doctors and lawyers. And they throw a party for themselves on the White House lawn. Now, on an entirely different matter, when you combine the border crisis and the violent crime crisis, law and order ranks as the American people's number 2 priority, second only to the inflation crisis. While Democrats' economic policies have waged war on working families' financial security, their soft on crime policies have eroded America's physical security. Cities, towns, and neighborhoods across the country are reeling from a wave of violent crime. Just last weekend in my state of Kentucky, experienced a spate of murders and attempted murders that rattled residents and literally overwhelmed the police. Lexington saw 4 separate shooting incidents on Saturday night alone, leaving 9 hurt, some with life-threatening injuries. The Lexington Police Department veteran described it as a pretty much unprecedented night in my 20 years. Officers were so tied up that they were unable to respond to other crimes and disorder. Louisville also saw a flurry of violence, the second highest number of homicides in one weekend this year, 6 people murdered in just 3 days. Both cities documented record homicide numbers last year, and Lexington is on track to do so again. For Louisville, this is the 3rd consecutive year of triple-digit killings. Now, of course, this crisis isn't just hitting Kentucky. These trends are nationwide. For years, the far left has impugned the motives and honor of police officers and taken aim at their funding. For years, top liberal donors have poured money into campaigns of radical district attorneys in big cities whose whole stated agenda is to not prosecute crimes. For years, Democratic elites have pushed for letting violent criminals out of prison. Democrats just nominated and confirmed a Supreme Court justice who argued as a D.C. district judge that COVID justified, listen to this, letting every single prisoner in Washington, D.C. custody out of jail and back on the streets. This has been an intentional, strategic campaign from the far left. And now Americans are being robbed, carjacked, assaulted, and murdered. Their families are being poisoned with illegal drugs. Just weeks ago, Senator Rubio gave the Senate a vote to increase funding for fighting crime and keeping dangerous criminals locked up. Every Senate Republican supported us. Every Democrat joined on party lines to block it. Later today, our colleagues from Tennessee will hold a press conference to discuss the horrifying case of Eliza Fletcher, a 34-year-old mom and teacher in Memphis, whom a career criminal forced into an SUV and murdered while she was out for her morning run. The suspect had multiple violent crimes on his rap sheet, dating back to age 14, and had just been let out of prison early for a prior kidnapping. So there are far too many tragic stories like Eliza Fletcher's being written every day and every week all across our country. Entire neighborhoods have become unwalkable. In many places, public transit has become nearly unusable. A few months ago, the Washington Post profiled one day in the life of a female immigrant bus driver in Denver who gets screamed at and threatened by lunatics on a daily basis. Just yesterday, a 49-year-old was stabbed in the back while riding the subway in New York City after he was asked another passenger to just quiet down. Our Democratic friends like to talk about fairness and compassion. There's nothing fair, compassionate about letting cities descend into violence and chaos. There's nothing fair or compassionate about legislating like career criminals deserve fifth and sixth chances, more than young mothers deserve the right to go out for a morning jog and come home alive. Stable prices, reliable energy, secure borders, and basic public safety are four of the most basic duties that any government in a civilized country owes its citizens. These things are the absolute minimum that American families ought to be able to count on, the bare minimum. And the Democrats' one-party government cannot deliver it. On another matter, it's been encouraging to see good news regarding the Ukrainian people's fight to defend and reclaim their sovereignty. Latest reports indicate that Ukraine has recently liberated 2,400 square miles of their own territory from Russian hands. The sight of a democratic nation beating back totalitarian aggression continues to inspire the free world. It should make other thugs think twice about following in Putin's footsteps. But obviously, it's not nearly time to ease up. The axis of authoritarians is still pushing hard for Ukraine to fail. Iran is equipping the Russian military with armed drones like the ones they and their proxies have used against American forces in Syria and Iraq and against our Israeli, Emirati, and Saudi partners. North Korea is reportedly refilling Russia's artillery stockpiles. And the PRC has publicly supported Moscow's narrative through every Russian atrocity. So our Ukrainian friends may still face a long, hard struggle to achieve victory as they define it, but Western countries can help by stepping up the pace of our collective assistance. Ukraine's hard-won successes on the battlefield could have come actually even earlier if the Biden administration and European allies that take their cues from Washington had been quicker and more proactive to deliver the capabilities Ukraine actually needed. Ukraine's forces are working wonders with Western equipment, They've quickly integrated cutting-edge systems like HIMARS and Javelin and Stinger missiles. The West, hesitant to put these capabilities in the right hands, has cost lives. Horrors could have been avoided if the Biden administration and our European partners hadn't been self-deterred from providing these tools sooner. The Ukrainians need more of the weapons we've been giving them. They need to start getting them faster. And they also need new capabilities like long-range ATACMS, larger drones, and tanks. Not all of these weapons need to come from America. Make no mistake, our allies are looking to us for signals. President Biden should be clear with Western Europe about the need for them to make meaningful, specific contributions to Ukraine and to do it quickly. He should also be clear with our allies that our defense holiday is over. It's time for all of us to rebuild our militaries and defense industrial bases. This will take urgent investments, regulatory reform, and prioritization to expand our capacity to produce critical munitions and systems. These short and long-term steps alike are in Europe's vital interest, America's vital interest, and the entire free world's. Beijing, Tehran, and other authoritarian regimes cannot think for 1 minute that trampling free people's sovereignty will go unpunished.